But for me, how I understood it was that circa 72, 73, the CIA became aware of, because they're always looking and feeling to see who's doing what. And evidence was presented that the Soviets and the Chinese were heavily involved in the study of clairvoyance, or, ESP or paranormal phenomena, those kinds of things. And they're only interested in it because if you understand how intelligence pictures are created, you must think of it like a puzzle. Mm-hmm. There is no intelligence collection methodology that is 100% accurate. None. Because why? All of them fall to human interpretation, even signals intelligence or electronic intelligence or satellite, photo intelligence, or especially human intelligence or anything else. There are all weaknesses and flaws in that process through the interpretation. And now I think there used to be there was like this 5 that were like the standard 5 intel collection methodologies that were used. And now, because of all of the technology that's there, I think I recently read there's upwards of 32 intel collection methodologies. That means that's 32 providers of pieces of the puzzle. All of them with varying degrees of accuracy and timeliness. Mm-hmm. And it is the analyst's position to pull all that together and try to assemble the puzzle into an actionable picture. Often not very easy to do and often very time consuming. So when the director of the CIA was told or briefed that these things were going on in Russia and in China, the question back to Robert Gottlieb was, are we doing it? And Robert Gottlieb said, no, we're not. And so the decision was made then we need to get busy doing this. And there was Senate support from the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence. And so they put out a contract, a request for proposals. I don't know who all submitted proposals, but I do know that the proposal was awarded, the contract was awarded as a sole source contract. That's a very difficult kind of contract to get as a contractor. To get a sole source contract meant that the interpretation made by the Central Intelligence Agency that was overseeing this determined that SRI International, with Targ and Puthoff et al., all the rest of the engineers and scientists and physicists and whatever else were there, psychologists, that they proposed to do the job in such a way that nobody else could capture that. And so a 20-year sole source contract, I'm sure it was a standard one base year and 4 option years, but they did it for over 20 years. They had this contract, sole source. So they always toss around this figure of $20 million. When in the world have you ever heard of the U.S. government only spending $20 million? What? SRI was doing this work for $1 million a year? Come on, right?
Yeah, so, it'd be more expensive, like much more expensive than that.
So, of course. I mean, they were pulling in natural gifted psychics, guys like Uri Geller. They even interviewed Tony Robbins. He stands up on stage and tells people. Why? Because they were looking at human performance factors. They were looking, right? So he's a big human performance guy, transpersonal psychology guy. They were pulling in anybody and everybody to pick their brain, ask questions, see what they could offer. If there was something they could offer long term, okay, good, stay. If not, dismiss, next. And Ingo Swann, of course, came into this. If you want to read and wade through Ingo Swann's book called Remote Viewing, the Real Story, jump on it. It's online somewhere. You won't even have to buy it. But if you read it, it will be very much an indication of Ingo Swann's personality, which was quite eclectic and quite centered around Ingo. And I really loved the man, right? I did. I thought he was phenomenal in what he was capable of doing. So here was what happened in this contract. This is distilling down the contract into basically 3 deliverables. Of course, there were more, but these are the important ones. First one, can you tell us and prove whether or not human beings can actually do this thing, ESP, see something distant in space and time and collect and talk about it and blah, blah, blah. Is that a human ability that you can experimentally, scientifically measure and evaluate and prove and substantiate for us? Second question, or second deliverable, was, can you tell us who will be good at this so we can know how to get them and bring them into this program and develop a program? Third question was, can you duplicate this? Now, duplicating means, can you develop a training protocol so that as we select these people, we can train them to do this particular thing? I will shorten this part of the story quickly by saying, Targ Puthoff et al. At SRI are not educators, and they certainly are not military trainers. So to ask them as theoretical physicists or laser physicists and all the rest of them, right, to develop a program of instruction to train people how to do this, well, you might have as well have asked them to go find the lost art, something like that. They wanted to do it, and they wanted to give it an attempt, but they were not good at it. They're physicists. They're not military trainers. So you can't blame them. The only thing you can do is blame them for fighting you for that, over that. Ingo Swann was the guy they fought. Now, Ingo, in writing that I have seen, has never actually admitted that animosity or friction between him and mostly Targ. But he did admit it to me multiple times in telling his stories at his home in the Bowery in New York, that he said, and I quote, "I wanted to hit Russell Targ in the head with a hammer every day." And it was over a training protocol, because Dr. Targ had a vision for the protocol which was much more relaxed and just kind of easygoing, like the Pat Price or like the Joe McMoneagle interviews that you saw, where it was monitor driven. And then the viewer just sat there and, whatever altered state they could get in and, talked about what they were seeing. And Ingo was, no. It has to follow a protocol that we can measure what they're doing and direct and guide them without us telling them what to do. And following the guidance given by the auditors. It could not be grid Mercator. It could not be Cartesian. It can't be that long coordinates. It has to be the numbers randomly assigned to the concept of the target. Ingo put all of that stuff together. And he put in, which I am so amazed that a Bowery artist, right, would understand this mechanism, right? It has to have feedback. You have to feed back to the conscious mind and say you did this well, or you did this not so well. And so it can correct. And the repetition process, etc. So that came later down the road, but they started in 1973. Now, they were starting right at the time when all these things, Vietnam War winding down, troops coming out, the United States kind of in turmoil internally, and at the same time, looking around at how are we going to redesign the military. You have this thing. It was once called, and I heard the term, the golden sphere concept, which was to be this advanced human performance potentials, which is where the 1st Earth Battalion, the Task Force Delta think tank came in. You had Boyd, Colonel Boyd, coming in with the Boyd cycle, which most people may not know what that is. The Boyd cycle was you had an Air Force fighter pilot who flew in Vietnam and in Korea, and he never lost an air-to-air engagement. He never lost a simulated air-to-air engagement. No matter what they did to change the variables, he never lost those engagements. Of course, the Air Force wanted to know why. I'll distill down what Colonel Boyd said when he was Major Boyd. He said that I can see what my enemy is going to do before my enemy does it. And therefore, I position my aircraft, and he flies right into my gun target line. And this happens in microseconds, right? flying as they're flying. And so the Boyd cycle was developed: observe, orient, decide, and act, which became the OODA loop, right? And now if you Google that, there's probably 250,000 versions of that out there, but it began with this Air Force fighter pilot saying, in my mind, I observe, I orient my craft and self, I make a decision, pull trigger, not more complexities, right? And act, observe, orient, decide, and act. And the theory then began to be developed in that concept is, this is a tool used in sales. It's a tool used in human communication. This is the first time it's been quantified. But theoretically, and in every example I've ever seen, if you can spin your Boyd cycle faster than your opponent in a negotiation, in a briefing, in sales, in the air, flying, or on the ground, you will win every time. All things being equal in the engagement, if you can spin your cycle faster than the other person, you win. These were phenomenal, breakthroughs in human performance that were showing up, right? So the idea that the CIA now turns around and goes, oh, let's figure out about, psychic phenomena, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. Let's figure that out. Can humans really do that? So I think one of the very powerful things that came out of the SRI, experimentation was they very confidently came back to the CIA within a couple of years, 3 years maybe, and said, yeah, we can absolutely scientifically validate and assure you that human beings have this ability. Now, the next question was, can you tell us who would be good at it? This is a powerful answer.
If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons. Additionally, if you have any feedback, please put something in the comments below. And lastly, if you want to watch the full episode of this clip, you can find it above. Thanks again for watching.